I'm in class right now.
Okay, so can everybody hear me? Yes, no?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, cool. So we're going to be doing ink this week. I used to teach this in 1 week, and it was just too much. So this week we're going to work on our ink washes. And then next week we're going to introduce pens, microns, and Bic pens with that stuff. So the way we're going to handle ink, these are going to be your supplies. You're going to have your India ink. I diluted some already in this cup. And then I've got pure ink in this cup. And then I have opaque white ink. Optional supplies were a Montana paint marker to load up with your opaque white ink. This gives you a little bit more control than your brush. And then I also have a paint marker. So you'll start this stuff mostly the same way as you've been starting everything else. You're gonna look for an area in your still life that you want to focus on, and it's more important not to draw the whole thing with the ink, because when you have 30 minutes, the drying time massively affects your time management on the amount of stuff you can do. So you'll really want to zoom in somewhere and draw large, because ink will spread out, and if you've been doing those tiny little drawings, it's going to be near impossible to get any sort of detail. So I'm taking my vine, doing my gestural drawing, same as before. And you see I have my image going off the page in at least 3 different directions. And I'll start to build it up the tiniest bit with my vine charcoal, but I won't try and get the full range of values with it. You can also directly start drawing with your ink if you feel like it, but I feel like that's really difficult. But if you feel comfortable with it or have experience with ink in the past, feel free to go right ahead and do that. So I'm just going to generally drop in my shadows like that. And then I'm going to blend it out. But here's where things differ a little bit over the last 2 weeks, what we've been doing. So you have your brushes, your bamboo brushes, and a few different brushes. I use this 8 round as my bamboo. It's got the same sort of feeling, and then I have a few little liners. Any brushes you have laying around will work. The bamboo brush is good because you can alternate the line. So say over here, I can go from this width, and I can press down and get a completely different one. I can move back and keep on getting a thinner and thinner line. And so it covers more area quicker. So, but before I bring that ink in, I'm going to go around to my vine charcoal and start mixing it and using the water to blend that charcoal. So this just cuts out a step that you'd have to take with the ink, because it is hard to control the ink when at first showing how light and how dark it is. So I would definitely recommend doing value scales to the side, which I'll show you that in a moment before we begin putting the ink down. And since we have the opaque white ink, be aware of where your highlights are and try not to cover them, but it's not such a big deal if something, say you cover this whole eye and you've missed the highlight the white of the paper. So don't freak out about that. You can still make corrections with the ink. So another thing this does with putting the water over your vine, you know how it just wipe away, like over here, I don't know, it just wipe away. Now you can see that it's not going anywhere. It's on the page. So you don't have to worry about smearing. Okay, so I have this down. And what I was talking about with the middle cup right here, how I've diluted it, this is going to be a mid-tone, halfway in between what I can get, how light I can get, and how dark I can get with the ink. So I'm going to take my dark ink, back over here, layer, and dilute it out. And this will show me the range of values I'll be able to get with everything. And you could go darker and work in reverse. I suggested that to some of you with your charcoal drawings. This is the way I like to do it. It doesn't mean it's the only right way to do it. So however you feel comfortable and whatever helps you with your confidence doing it. So make sure you experiment with those. And you'll want to start out with a mid-tone because you don't want to get too dark too fast because it's harder to recover from that. So I'm going to come in and begin to drop shadow. And if you've ever used watercolors, it works a similar way, but it does dry. Although it does dry fast, it's still a little bit like watercolors in the way you can move it and shape it while you're working. See, like this portion's already dry. So you'll want to work quickly, but not too quickly. And this is why it's good to use a bamboo brush because you're covering a large area very fast. When you use these tiny little brushes, the area you can cover is not as great, you know. So if this dries here, I'm gonna have to work harder to get that to blend with everything else in the area. So I really recommend when you're doing your under drawings and plotting out the shadows and the highlights that you do use that bamboo brush. Try and stay away from the tiny, tiny brushes. Oh, and feel free to interrupt with any questions you have when you have them so you don't forget it at the end, but we will have a Q&A at the end. Something I'm not doing, but you should do. The tape on your supply list, tape this down before you start working on it. You can use drawing paper. Another optional supply is this this Bristol board. It takes the ink a lot better, and there's less creasing. I should have mentioned that first. I'm sorry. And then that's why you have a range of brushes here. Also, it's important to note that you'll want to keep on changing your water. It doesn't have to be every single drawing, but it might be multiple times in one drawing. But that water will get dirty, and you can see it's already getting brown. So instead of having a nice clear coat, you're going to have that color, whatever color your water dilutes to. And this is why it's good to have multiple brushes, because this is a larger area, but it's a more solid color. And to get a flatter color and a flatter value, you want to work fast. Okay, I've just about, you want to kind of count out the values that you see. See when's a good stopping point to move on to your darkest. So if I were to stop, if this was at the end of a like a 15-minute, 30-minute drawing, I'm going to count out. I have the shade of the paper 1, lightest 2, 3, 4, 5, and this darker 6. So that's a pretty good value scale. So you'll probably want to get it up to that point before you get your darkest stuff in. And just pay attention to the time. So you give yourself, about maybe 5 minutes on those shorter drawings to drop in everything. Also, it's a good idea to work simultaneously on 2 different drawings at the same time, because you can get frustrated by overworking it and not giving yourself enough time. I'm very impatient, so I could work this up and I could absolutely destroy it because their paper will start tearing. So I have this and one other, and when this is too wet to work, I just swap it out and work on the other one. All right, so this is a good spot to stop to start dropping in darker values. I'm going to swap to my pure ink, and I'm going to put in details as well as my darker shadows. And it's very easy to get frustrated at that stage where you don't want to even go to the details, but it'll all start making sense to you, and it'll make you feel better when you put in those darker areas, because it might just look like a blob for a while, and that's okay. Ink's hard, ink's frustrating. That's why I've decided this semester we're going to spend 2 weeks instead of 1. So we really have time to delve into it. I'm going to have to intentionally mess up here in a second to show you guys how to fix some stuff. I get the benefit of picking where that happens. You guys won't. So let's say there's a wet area, and then you put something there, and it starts bleeding out where you don't want it to go. All you got to do is not panic. Blot as much as you can with a paper towel or a rag, and then take your brush, smooth it out, blend it out. And then just keep on patting and taking off more and more. So don't worry if that happens. Like, oh, this little dot, perfect. I mean, just blend that out. No big deal. So don't even worry about that. You can start messing around with texture if you have the time. Just be cautious and aware of that time. It's easy to run out of it. So again, same thing with our charcoal drawings. The easiest way to make something look more complete, say we didn't even get this far, say we didn't even get to add the details. We have like a minute and a half left. All you're gonna do is take your super dark ink, drop yourself a background. I can even cover up this area over here, running out of ink, but you know, you can fix anything with your dark ink. All right, so we have it to this stage, and this is when I would start bringing in your opaque white ink. And this is undiluted, but of course you can do the same thing that I did with these two and do a little value scale. You could do it, you could paint yourself as a rectangle of your dark and start going through it. And that's as light as I can go, and then see how, well, as dark as I can go with the light and see how far I can push that. All right, so I'm gonna go in here. And it's a good idea to leave a little bit of white. That way you can go on top and have an extra value on top of the white of your paper. I can clean up some of that messy bits. Get in and get the detail on the flowers. Start actually drawing with that. And again, this is why it's good to have a bamboo brush, because you can go thick to thin just by the pressure and the angle of your hand. You can also use your highlights to divide spaces that might have blended together and gotten a little muddy, like right in there. Also pay attention to your objects. There's not only highlights inside, but along the angles of the form, which you might want to divide. So your 15-minute drawing should look something like this here. Do you guys have any questions about this ink wash?
I had a question. It's Maya.
Hi.
I was a little bit confused when I'm working with value scales. I can definitely see dark and light and then some shade of gray in between. But I was hearing you on this lecture talk about there being 6 different, clearly different value scales on the drawing that you were working on here.
Mhm.
Could you kind of give me an idea of how many shades I should target to work with?
Well,
in
let's
the-
just talk about 6 because there's hundreds of different values because there's all the many changes to form to make that gradation. So let's make this bigger. Let's just divide it into 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. So let's say this is our darkest square.
Yeah.
Really, really dark. Pressure off and just a little bit less. Okay. I'll keep on working. Open these up. And this will be white. There's white. So here we have 6 different values, this being a number, no, we have 7 because I added the white down here. 7 to 1. So each one is a step down, even though it might not be much of a step down. It all leads us, because when we're shading our forms, this is what I'm talking about with the value change. What this adds up to, applied to our drawings, is how we shade and how it starts to come off and then make the form 3-dimensional.
Right. Right. How about when you're saying build something up? That means
So building something up, it's like I'm talking about, we have this value scale right here. This is just with the vine. It's all the steps we were taking towards a finished piece. Because we could build this up more. We could add more value, more shading, more shadow. So I could come up here and where's my compressed charcoal? So I could come in here and start building it up more and getting darker and darker and darker
Mhm.
and adding more depth and more value. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
Can you give us a hint how to be able to see those different shades of gray in our actual objects?
You know, you could take a picture of it with your cell phone, not to draw, but take a picture of it with your cell phone and then grayscale it
Okay.
on your phone. And then that way you'll see that those changes. Because it is hard to translate colored objects to value, because color and value aren't the same thing. Values how dark and how light things are on the shading, and color is this is a white cat, you know. And it's a weird thing to kind of wrap your head around for sure.
Gotcha. That helps. Thank you.
Okay, good. Anybody else have any questions?
Could you explain a bit more, like how to get proper proportion and perspective?
Yeah, we can do that. Let me get a new sheet of paper. And let me grab, no, I have it right here. All right, let's get something a little bit more simple. I'm gonna grab this cube here. place it right there. And then I'm gonna grab this jar and I'm gonna put it a ways away from the cube. But when you're looking around, sometimes they touch, sometimes they don't. So there is a spatial depth with that stuff. So I'm going to draw this out like my gestural drawing, and I'm going to make it a little sloppier than I normally would. Let's say I think the cube looks like that. And the jar. I should make the bottom of the jar so we can talk about that as well. Okay, so I've drawn out where I think things are. This cube is larger than the jar, even far away. Even if I was to pull it here, it's still larger from my point of view. So the jar needs to be smaller and show the depth of the space. And you can see I have these lines going this way, but actually they run parallel of each other. So coming here and here, and I'm going to take a ruler and this cube right here. So if I was looking at it from far away, I'd hold my ruler up right there so I can see what angle it's at, and I can translate that back onto my paper. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold it right there, and I'm going to see how those lines run. And that's how they really are. However, I'm not looking at it like this. It slopes down. So I can come up here with my ruler straight and have that and that right there. So now I have an anchor point. I know that this rectangle right here of the cube is the right size, the right proportion, and the right angle. So from there, I can build up the rest of the cube by just taking my ruler, making sure I'm straight on. And then I can cut it down. I can bring it back here. I can use my ruler to eye everything and see where it cuts off. And I'm still taking this angle. If it were to go out, say if it was to go out this way, you know, I'd take it out and bring it back. But I know it goes this way, so I'm gonna cut it right back. And use those anchor points to draw that. And now that I have this cube, I have this jar over here, and the jar is much smaller. It's going to be larger because it's closer up, but it's still, in relative size to the space, it is smaller than the cube. So how small? I could take my ruler right across the top and see the radius of this jar is 2 inches. So up here, this is almost 6 inches. So I know that, you know, I'm terrible at math. That's why I'm an artist. But I'm going to say that's roughly less than half the size. So I can come in here. And I'm just doing that gestural drawing, going round and round until I sort of see the shape that's in front of me. And then I stop. So I see this space. I can outline this space right there. And then I can come back because all this field extends right back to the jar. And I'm going to use this as an anchor point. I'm going to come back, add that, come back, add the side, and then I'm going to follow this shape right here. If we're going to break it down, let's just take the very center of this, and plot that out as well. So we know exactly where that arc bends. And then again, we do our gestural drawings quick and fast until we see about what's on there. And then we can remove this stuff. And now you have something that's proportionate in size, and it's in the proper perspective. And then this, at this point, is where you would start adding all the extra things, the jar of the lid. You know, if it curves out, then you put the curves on, and you can just erase that little section right there. So now your jar curves. And then you can add the base to this thing and how it comes over here and goes behind. But you can still, if you're still having trouble imagining that in your head, you can still use the ruler for every part of this and use this as an anchor point. And since you've used this as an anchor point, you know everything else that you've based this on is correct. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay, cool.
Thank you.
And it does take a lot of time and practice to eye that stuff. And that's why the gestural drawing's really important to do it first, even if it's super off. When you're staring at your objects and not really staring at the paper, your brain knows more than, you know, your eyes know more than your brain does. So you're paying attention to the details. You'll be surprised how accurate it actually is and how little you actually have to correct it. Just spend minimal time actually looking at your paper while you're doing your gestural drawings. And then start to analyze things after that. Anyone else? If you think of anything, email me during the week. I'll have my assignments up for this week. Tomorrow morning, I'll have your assignments for this week graded. And that's pretty much it. Let me take down everybody's name that was here. And you will see those bonus points put onto your gradebook in Moodle tomorrow. All right, everybody enjoy your evening, and please don't hesitate to contact me. Have a great night.
You too. Thank you.